1974, winning the Robert Bell Scholarship. She spent 5 years as a full-time journalist and editor. Since then has been a freelance researcher and writer with a preference for historical subjects. She wrote a series of commissioned or contracted books, Not Just Tea and Talk, 10 Years of Trade Aid in New Zealand, 1983, No Turning Back, A History of the Interchurch Aid Work of the National Council of Churches, 1986, Durham Street Church, The Heart of a Mission, 1989, and Hurunui Heritage, 2000. She researched 150 possible entries for the Dictionary of New Zealand Biography and contributed 12 essays to the printed volumes across 1990 to 2000. In 1992, she published The Woman Question, an anthology of women's writing from 19th century New Zealand, then Plain Living and High Thinking, 1995, on the Lovell-Smith family of Christchurch in printing, publishing and the women's movement. 2 biographies followed, The Enigma of Sister Mary Leo in 1998 and Easily the Best, The Life of Helen Connon in 2004. And her latest book was I Don't Believe in Murder, Standing Up for Peace in World War I Canterbury in 2023. Between 2004 and 2014, Margaret did contract work for the Christchurch City Council Strategy and Planning Group, updating information on heritage buildings, while working as coordinator for the Workers' Education Association, planning lecture programs and also giving talks to community groups. Since 2017, she has been a volunteer at the Canterbury Museum, cataloguing documentary archives. Her memberships include the Kate Shepherd House Interpretation and Reference Group, and since 2020, the Papanui Heritage Group, of which she has been secretary since 2023. Margaret is a member of FANZA, the Professional Historians Association of Aotearoa New Zealand, and has been a long-serving member of the Canterbury Historical Association and the Canterbury History Foundation. We think that Margaret richly deserves the Rhodes Medal for her dedication to historical research in Canterbury over a long period and her many publications contributing to Canterbury history.
I won't say everything I've written because I want to keep this short. I know that afternoon tea is waiting. But in thanking the foundation, I do want to thank and acknowledge the people who have contributed to my work as a historian. But the list is long, and with afternoon tea waiting, I also intend to keep my remarks as short as I can. So the people and places I thank and acknowledge today are just a snapshot of those who have contributed to my work. Looking back over the past 45 years, when for some of the time I've worked as a historical researcher and writer, I see myself serving a long and ongoing apprenticeship. With each project, I learned new information and new skills. And part of my education came from attending lectures, like the one today, where we learn new factual information, but also get challenged by different points of view and inspired by insights into the way history can be remembered, researched and valued. So thank you, Mike, for today's lecture, and thanks to the Canterbury Historical Association, who organised most of the lectures I've attended. In particular, I acknowledge Jeff Rice, who was always welcoming and encouraging. Next, I acknowledge Brian Turner, who first set me on a history writing path by arranging my first 2 history writing commissions. At the time, I was looking for part-time journalism work that I could do from home, but found I positively enjoyed the experience of sitting down with minute books and newsletters and working out how to turn large volumes of information into a readable account. I've always felt at home with archives and really appreciate the professionals who devote their lives to preserving and caring for historical objects and documents. And I especially want to mention the archives collection at the Canterbury Museum, where I learnt a lot from the archivist Joanne Smith while working there as a researcher, volunteer, and for a short time as a colleague. Now that I'm retired, I'm once again enjoying working with the museum's archives as a volunteer, and I appreciate the support of the staff, some of whom are here today. My initial research at Canterbury Museum arose from an interest in family history, and I continued to work on this intermittently for 8 years before self-publishing the book, Plain Living, High Thinking. My father's generation were very willing to help me, but I also owe much to the preceding generations who had kept and stored family documents, photos and letters. Next, I think publisher Wendy Harris, who was immediately interested in my proposal for a book of writings by women who won the vote. Working with Wendy to turn my proposal into the book The Woman Question was a very enjoyable learning curve. If there is an overall theme to my historical work, it has been a desire to retrieve, uncover, and bring into the light stories which have been hidden from history. I was especially interested, and still am, in reclaiming the stories of women's lives and achievements, and so I was really pleased to be contracted by a Dictionary of New Zealand Biography. I eventually wrote a full biography of Helen Connan of this university, made possible by funding from the Canterbury History Foundation through the Community Historian Award. So again, I thank the Foundation for all the work they've done over the years in support of local history. More recently, the invitation from Dr. Kate Jews to be researcher and writer for the World War I Commemoration Project, Voices Against War, kept me busy for the next few years and eventually led to a book, I Don't Believe in Murder. I acknowledge the support of the University School of Humanities, which hosted the project's website at the Digital Arts Lab. I also thank Associate Professor Jane Buckingham for editing the content of the website, and Dan Bartlett for his research, writing and enthusiasm. I wish some of our current world leaders had the wisdom and maturity of our early peace advocates. More recently, I've enjoyed the opportunity to give women's history lectures at Kate Shepherd House, while also giving lectures to other groups, and working with members of the Papinui Heritage Group. And I might just add that Jill Gardner was one of the very significant leaders of that group when it first began. And finally, I thank my family and friends who have always supported me and whose support is always valued. So thank you.